Hey everybody, this is Darkstar Mike. I am back in Chicago and we are still under quarantine. COVID-19 continues to plague the nation, so I'm trying to find some new and interesting projects to occupy my time and my mind and my focus. And there's not a lot going on here in Chicago. Our mayor, Lori Lightfoot, has closed down all the bars that don't have food. So, I am standing in front of my garage, and it is a white garage panel door that is pretty boring. So I want to spice it up. I want to do something with it. I want to give it some accent because, you know, it's boring. So, if you'll notice, if you can see, and maybe you can't, but there are panels along each section of the door, little square panels, and there are 8 of each row. There are 4 rows, there are 32 panels. So what I have decided to do is to accent each panel with a Roman emperor, starting at Augustus, the first one, and ending at Constantine. Now, I'm sure you're aware, or maybe you're not, that there were far more emperors than 32 within that time frame. It's about 300 years. But I'm gonna try and focus on any emperor that was in power for more than a year. Now, even so, there's going to be a couple more than 32 there, so I had to leave a few off that were just beyond a year, so my apologies, Macrinus. Otherwise, what we're going to do is I want to do a little bit of an accent to make each panel pop, and then I'm going to lay in the portrait of each emperor, and at the end, hopefully we'll have something kind of interesting. So, first we're going to have to do is clean this thing, because before we paint anything, we're gonna have to scrub it down real good. So we're gonna do that right now. Hope you like it. Okay, so we've washed the garage. Most garage doors are made out of aluminum. This one is made out of aluminum. A lot of them, especially most of my neighbors, they have this rectangular pattern. Unless you have a 2-car or smaller garage, then they tend to be square. But this one is rectangular, and as you can see, there's a rectangular inlay, and that's where we're going to put our little portrait or tableau. So what we got to do is find out what that is, and that's about 14.5 inches by 8 inches, so that's where we're going to put our little portraits, okay? So what I want to do is I want to like paint each one of these rectangular inlays with a color that'll give it some pop. And my garage in particular is kind of, well, beige, so what I chose to go with was gold. So we're going to spray paint this. I have it all. And they're a little rigid too, so you really got to use this painter's tape and get it pressed in really good so it doesn't spread. And I use some Trader Joe's bags to make certain that. Now we're going to keep this about 6 to 8 inches from the garage door itself, and then we're just going to spray it over. Okay, that looks pretty good. We're going to let that dry, and then we're going to have to move on to panel after panel after panel. This is going to take a little while, and I'm not going to videotape it. But this looks pretty good.
I caught you putting graffiti on your garage door.
And we've run into our neighbor Lou. Hey Lou, how you doing?
I'm all right.
Got a little garage project going on here. Okay, so I've been working on the panels that we're going to use to illuminate all of 32 of the emperors that we've chosen. And I've decided to do this on a program called GIMP. It's an open source software similar to Photoshop, except free. So, as we recall, each panel is about, as we measured, about 14 inches wide by about 8 inches high. So we're using legal paper here in order to produce, you know, the right size panel. And we put together the tableau, as it were, which looks something like this. So basically you have the picture, you have the name, when they were emperor and about approximately how long they served as emperor. And then surrounding it, I used a border so that when it prints out, it'll be easier to cut and use the exact right size, because I didn't go exactly to 14 inches by 8 because we're going to want to go in by about a ½ inch, maybe an inch on each side of the panel, so as to have laminate sealing the entire panel, because you don't want to get any water in there, so you want to have a little bit of room just along the margins to seal it. So let's print this out and we'll see what that looks like. And that's not too bad. So this is basically what we're going to be using. And I've only got about 25 left to go. So that's this step. Now let's move on to the next step. Okay, so we have our panels completed. But these panels are going to be exposed to the sun. They're out in the garage, they're going to be exposed to the elements. And what we want to try and do, even though this isn't color, there will be some decay in the ink from the UV rays. So we want to try and prevent that as much as possible. So what I've decided to do to give this the most longevity that it possibly can is we're going to give it a shot of Krylon UV resistant clear acrylic coating spray. And this should hopefully delay the inevitable decay of the ink. So we're just gonna lay it out here, and you're gonna want to do this outside. And you don't have to use a lot of it either, but we're just gonna put it like that. And it dries within a matter of seconds, and then you can move on and laminate. So that's our next move. Okay. All right, so I cut out along the border. So we're going to have exactly about 7.5 by 14, maybe 13.5, something along those lines. And then what we're going to use to laminate is, I found this online, these are legal size laminating pouches. They're 7 mil, which is really thick. I mean, usually you see 3 or 5 being the standard. This is 7 mil, there's 100 of them, and I think it was only $20, so this is a great buy. Best Laminating, I think is the name of the company. So we're going to take the Hadrian, which is the emperor of choice right now. We're just going to throw that into the laminating pouch and take it right to the very end. This way we don't have to, cats are running around. This way we don't have to measure that much, because we're going to have to cut out along the lamination, allowing about a ½ inch, maybe an inch on each side. And here's our little laminator. Had this from the video store days, so not everyone has a laminator. The laminators are cheap. If you need to get one, $25, $30 maybe, you know, and they come in handy. So we're just going to throw that in here, and then that will just melt it all. Generally, you got to do about 2 passes of it, because for some reason the first part of it is usually not completely melted. And then when it's complete, we're going to have something that looks a little bit like this. And we're just going to cut along the borders of it I would use the chopper here, but it's not long enough for a letter size lamination. So we're just going to use scissors and cut along the borders using about ½ inch to an inch on each side of the panel. And then we'll get them all together, and then we're going to put them up. Okay, I've finished all the panels, and they're all laminated, and I've used a kind of double-sided foam tape. I find that this works very well in the outdoors. If the sun hits it, it doesn't tend to dry out, but rather melt the foam into kind of a bonding glue. So that's kind of what we're looking for here. First of all, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Czechvar. Czechvar, finest European lager there is. Love this stuff. Take all that craft microbrew and flush it down the toilet. Oh my. miracles, magic. Okay. So a lot of people were asking me why I did this, why I wanted to do this. Basically, it was a dream I had about having the emperors on the garage and, you know, do whatever you want. It's America. Little pink houses, you know? So I also want to say that if there's anybody who's interested in Roman imperial history, the best source is the History of Rome podcast that Mike Duncan does. He's an instructor at University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I think he's living in Paris now. But excellent. It'll give you a full, and believe me, there are way more than 32 here. This is just a Constantine. There's a long series of short-lived emperors who would be overturned in a coup, killed by the Praetorian Guard, installed by the Third Legions, and then that one would be killed a couple months later. So there's a whole series, around 200 said there's just too many of them. So I'm focused on the major ones here, a year or more, except for there's a couple. My apologies to Maximinius, okay? Didn't make the cut. Okay, so we're just gonna try this out. So if this would go here, Augustus being the first emperor, following the assassination of Julius Caesar. And that looks okay. So now, I'm gonna just do a little magic trick. Shazam. And voila, it's complete. So now we're gonna test it to see how long the ink lasts, how long the glue lasts, or how long it can go without being defaced by local hooligans. But hopefully it'll be inspirational and perhaps educational for kids in the neighborhood. If you have any questions or you'd like to point out any historical errors I've made in this, which I'm sure there are many, feel free to leave some comments and down below. And if you like it, subscribe, I guess, and history, very important.